Some Seminarians is proudly brought to you by the Vocation Office of the Archdiocese of San Antonio.
Howdy, and welcome to our podcast. Welcome to our, was this the Emmaus house we're in, right?
Emmaus House Formation.
Emmaus, Father Tom, you owe me $5 for saying Emmaus house. We're here. So charge whoever produces the CTSA or that $5 for using your space. Anyways, so I'm joined today with Deacon Evan and Dustin, and I'm Robert Shelton. We're seminarians for the Archdiocese of San Antonio, and today we're here to talk about vocations, our vocation specifically, discernment. And what is discernment? We should probably start off with that right away. Discernment is a process of inclining ourselves to God and asking, what does He want for us? Like, I discerned coming here today because God wants me here, right? That was a joke, very bad joke. This is my second podcast today, and coffee's running low. So anyways, I'm going to turn it over to y'all because we're here to talk about vocations, not listen to me, tell bad jokes. So who wants to start us off and just talk about your vocation story and how'd you get to sitting here in Emmaus house talking to random people?
Yeah, I absolutely volunteered Deacon to go.
I absolutely concur that, Deacon, you should go.
Pretty clever the way you started first and then lateral to me. So. Deacon Evan Wittig, been a deacon, it'll be 39 years this July. My wife passed away in October 2021. And August 2022, I went to church, and it was St. Helena's. My son was directing the music, so I went there. It's not my normal church. I'm normally at Holy Spirit. But at the end of Mass, the priest was from Europe. He has this deep voice, and he goes, "Don't forget to pray Vocation Thursday." Just an announcement, But I journal every morning. I pray every morning. So the next morning, my journal, I write down vocation ? And I said, "Lord, the next move is yours. It has to be your idea, not my idea." So this was in August. At the end of August, I was at a conference sitting with a friend of mine and his wife. It was a Mass, a beautiful Mass. And at the end of Mass, he just looks at me and he says, "You should be a priest." And I go, "Really?" And 3 more times that day at the conference, he kept introducing me to people as a future priest. So I began the discerning process then, and I spoke to the oblates, and I came here to, the pastoral center and met with Bishop Gary and began the discerning process.
Yeah, fantastic. I think, it's interesting to note that, typically when we think vocations, we just think of some young guy, right, joining the seminary when he's like 18 years old and, that's kind of it. But, the reality of the church, throughout time is that different people have been called at different ages. Peter was probably in his 30s, right? So was Paul. John, St. John, the gospel was probably 15, right? So I think each one of us receives the call to whatever God's calling us in vocation at different points in our life, right? And that God truly does work in our vocation journey, right? Those little, sometimes it's someone just whispering in the ear, like your friend, right? That, you should discern priesthood. And, what's interesting for you, Deacon, is you already discerned 2 vocations in life, right? To marriage first, and then to the diaconate, the permanent diaconate.
Right. And, of course, my wife was involved in both of those, so. But what's neat about that is Mary's hand was involved in the day that I met her. I was studying at Oblate. They had a 10 o'clock Mass, Chapel of the Immaculate Conception, Our Lady of Lourdes Grotto. It was a Sunday morning. And after Mass, they say, "Free coffee and donuts." That's all I needed to hear because I love coffee and donuts. And there she was across the room. I actually wrote a song about it. Beautiful eyes, and it just almost like love at first sight. I tried to break up with her, being the stupid guy that I am. And so she called me the next day and says, "You're falling in love with me. What's wrong with that?" And I'm going, I couldn't come up with an answer. I've had a number of girlfriends. None of them ever fought for the relationship. So she's fighting for the relationship. Oh, my goodness. So we're married 41 years. And mostly happy. You know the story, you can, with the man and his wife, says you can be right or you can be happy. So I was happy most of the time. So, and then the diaconate, she was 100% behind me on that also. First year she went to classes with me. So back then it was only 3 years. So I got the budget training.
Well, you're paying for it now.
Yeah, we get the big bucks now with the oblates and.
Yeah, but that's crazy in your discernment, though. I mean, you discerned, marriage, right? Then you discerned diaconate, and now, and I say this with all due respect, now kind of in the later, part of your life, right? You answer God's call yet again.
Yes.
And it wasn't just like, all right, we're going to make you a priest tomorrow, right? Because for Dustin and I, right, it's a long formation process, almost 10 years in some guy's case.
Yeah.
And so you had to come back into school and live at the seminary with a bunch of, young guys.
I'm pretty sure I'm the oldest seminarian. I'm not good at math, but I'm pretty sure about that.
Which is funny because in seminary lingo, I'm the grandfather at the seminary because I've been at this institution the longest. I'm the old man. Yeah. And then, but yeah, you do have me beat in wisdom, and in years, yeah.
Well, I better learn by now. I'm 73. But the neat thing is God called Abraham at 75 and Moses at 80. So they're my role models.
You have them beat. You have them beat by a few years.
Yeah. If everything goes well, I should be ordained next year, and it'll be my 40th year as a deacon.
Oh, what a cool
year of Jubilee.
Cool. That's awesome.
Year of Jubilee. Yeah, we'll have to go to Rome together. We'll take Dustin too, though. We'll take Dustin because I'll be our ordination year, hopefully, God willing. So we'll take you as our seminarian to the Jubilee.
Yes.
But speaking of you, Dustin, and the Jubilee, right? How did you get here?
Yes. Dustin Martin from the previous Courage podcast. I'm back.
Or foreshadowing the future.
Oh yeah, it's either before or after this. So hello. So what? But there's a very interesting word y'all keep throwing out there, discernment, because up till about 6 years ago, I didn't even know that word existed, and I was born and raised Catholic, and did all the usual stuff for the first half of my life. We did the Easters and the Christmas and the church mass on Sunday, but discernment was not a thing. Priesthood was, I might have thought about it when I was a little kid. You kind of messed, but by the time I got out of high school, church was church, and life was life, and I had girlfriends and life. And then a little bit after high school is when I started looking into the military. And I'm what they call third career. I was almost 10 years Army, did 3 deployments. And then after I got out, I bought and owned my own business in New Braunfels, Texas. I had that for about 4 years. And then after I ended that, like you mentioned, for a couple of years, I was a pre-K teacher while taking care of some other things. So I had a lot of different opportunities, and before all that I had about 13 different jobs, and so nothing really came to fruition. I always felt kind of like something missing, or like an emptiness, or not a lack of fulfillment. And so I just kind of kept filling different things with this idea. Well, maybe this will make me happy. Maybe I was even manager for GNC for a couple of years, and I got the promotion. I was making more money, and I was in a position. And I was like, I was pursuing something, but it never came to anything. It was just pursuit and pursuit and pursuit. And so eventually, this started just kind of imploding on me. And yeah, then God got my attention, and it was like, what are you doing with your life? What are you doing with yourself? And I never thought about, any other things. And kind of like you, in a different situation, after God got a hold of me, about 30. So for a while, I did my own, I call it the religion of me. Mm-hmm. Whatever made me happy, whatever, at what cost. I wanted more money. I wanted to, of course, I wanted to be my own business owner, and I had my fancy, my cars, my parties, and all that. So I was in the religion of me for a while. And at the end of it, I was just empty. It wasn't, I was not happy. And so God got my attention, and then it was like, okay, wow, there's this amazing God out there, and thank God I'm Catholic, because I even I went church shopping after my conversion back. I went church shopping, and I was like, where do I go, and this and that, and God just kept leading me right back to the Catholic faith. And so then it was like, okay, God, you got my attention. What do I do now? Well, I didn't realize this is what we kind of call discernment, listening. I never listened before. Ask my parents; they'll tell you. I never listened before. So all of a sudden, I opened a doorway that I didn't even know about until I started getting invited to my Melchizedek projects. And all of a sudden, somehow I'm being invited to, well, why don't you go to seminary? Or it actually began with the discernment house and all these things that I never thought about. And of course, like I said earlier, it was not me. You don't want me. Not the things I've done, the things I've seen. You can find better people. But yet every time I try to walk away from God and I said, what do you want me to do? He would show me and I say, no, not that. Show me what you really want me to do. And so as I kept digging more into this and as I turned it into more prayer, more adoration, going to daily mass, I didn't realize I was building my discernment. And that was the key that I never had before. Because discernment wasn't just vocation. Because vocations is well, it's a necessary part of our life. But you got priesthood, you got marriage, you got religious, and you got single. All those require the same thing. Discernment, listening to God. I never did that before. And so once I started doing that, that's how you start changing things in your life. That's how I started getting rid of bad habits. That's how I started getting that self-awareness. And the more self-aware I became, the more God became aware in my life. All of a sudden it went from God was never with me to I can see where God was. His footprints, his handprints on me that got me through certain things. God was always there. And so I think the biggest key to anyone is, discernment in our faith. If you're thinking you're looking for a vocation or not, discernment is a very important and needed tool. It's a tool that we need, we have to have. And that like brought you here, I didn't know about it though. And I think it's kind of not lacking, but I think it's misunderstood or just not talked about in a certain way. Because I never thought about it until I got that kind of slap in the face, and I started coming here, and then getting around this kind of environment, you start hearing about it. But outside this environment, it's kind of not so mentioned. Go to adoration and listen to the God in your heart. Discern what is God's will. Discern what are your desires, and yeah. So that's what's led me to this seat right here. That got me through the propedeutic program. Because going through discernment house led to more invitations of me saying, I'll do this, God, but they're going to say no. Once they learn about who I am, they're not going to let me in. And then they're like, well, we'd like you to take the next step. Well, did you read my profile? And so it just kind of kept going.
I actively tried to get kicked out.
No, I did not actively try. No, but yes. So we just kept praying on it. And I just kept saying, Lord, if this is what you want from me, and kind of like your situation, I went to a church one day just kind of in prayer. And this place was in the nicest way possible. I was probably one of the youngest people at this particular mass. And this, he must have been 80-something, almost 90-year-old priest. And at the end of his homily, and he's doing mass, and he just stands up there, and at the end of it, he goes, and you know what? At least look at trying to being a priest. And I was like, who's he talking to? Ain't no one in here going to be no priest. And it just kind of hit me. And he just stood up there and he said, at least try. And it was like, bam. And I was like, well, okay. Well, then I'll take the next step then, Lord, And so that started the applications. And I just kept praying every step. Lord, this is what you want me to do. I'll try it. And if it goes, and before you know it, I was in a propedeutic program that first year. And then that just deepening the prayer life too. The bringing in that prayer life is so important. But that discernment was such a huge thing that I just never understood.
Absolutely. Yeah, this the being open is the key. I mean, I think unfortunately, right, like so much about discernment vocations nowadays is, it's a natural human inclination, right? We use terms. We use terms to express concepts. And so, I think often we throw out these big terms like discernment and vocation and go to adoration and listen. And I think sometimes, we put a lot of words around what's really just a simple thing, which is just being open to God's voice. And, I think of, if we even look at scripture, right? You look at Peter. Peter was fishing, he's doing work. And then he was just open when God approached him. Really all of the apostles and disciples, when we have these moments of conversion, It was they were open to listening. Paul on the road to Damascus, right? Just being the moment of almost being vulnerable to God and opening, and then you see how they change his lives. And listening to your story, I'm reminded of the centurion, right? In the gospel, right? He's one of my favorite saints, and I love it because every day at mass I'm reminded of him because we're at the time he was probably still a pagan. We quote basically from a pagan in the liturgy, right? Where we it says, "Behold the Lamb of God," and you say, Lord, I'm not worthy if you're under my roof, right? And then what does Jesus say in reply to him? I've never seen this amount of faith in the land of Israel. I mean, that was, Jesus said that about a pagan, a Roman soldier, right? That had so much faith and trust in God. But it was also interesting because that centurion was discerning how to cure his servant, which was probably his son, right? If we look at the scriptures, right?
You watching Chosen? Is that where you got that from? The Chosen?
No, this was like
I've
been in seminary. I've been in seminary a few years.
Yeah,
is it in the Chosen? They
I
showed
think that was when
I haven't watched the latest thing.
Spoiler alert. Yeah.
Don't sue us, Chosen, for spoiling. I don't even know this can come out like a year from now. I don't know. It'll be on like season 9 by the time this comes out. But yeah, but it's important, right? Because it was he discerned I'm this I'm at my road's end. I clearly want something good for this person, right? That act of discernment. And then I'm going to go listen to what God has to say. Right? I'm going to listen to Christ. And so I think that's so critical in our vocation and our discernment journey, right? Is this being open to God? Because the unfortunate reality of our world today is people don't want to listen. Like you were saying, the religion of me. We live in an I generation. People, we live amongst the people today where it's all about instant gratification. It's all about the self. It's all about the validation of what makes us happy.
What is my
right?
worth?
But yeah, exactly. And worth is tied into some kind of material object or some type of social prestige or social capital. Right. And at the end of the day, I mean, it's hollow. It's so hollow. I mean, I know in my own discernment and faith journey, I mean, I felt so hollow pursuing these ends, right? I went to Texas Tech after high school, and I was studying engineering, and just didn't really feel called to that. Like I was good at it. I saw the world around me changing, and I wanted to make a difference, and so I thought I'd be a state trooper, right? And I was about to take the test. And then it was just, it filled up, the test slots filled up. And then I had to wait a few more months. And, it was just like these barricades kept being put up. That was nothing of like my own fault or design. It was just by coincidence or, and then I figured, I was kind of running for my vocation. So finally I made the mistake, which is in discernment, right? And in prayer, you never give God a blank check, right? You never sit there and did what you did and say, God, whatever you want, because God will cash it in, And so that's what I did. It sounds the same as you. You finally take that step and listen and say, all right, whatever you want, God. And then you find how really unexpectedly in your life's changed. I think, again, of Peter. I mean, Peter abandoned everything. I mean, his nets, his boat, it was a lot of money back then. I mean, you think of a fishing boat today. I mean, the multi-million-dollar operations. And he just walked away. Right. And then, what does he say? I don't know, time frame wise, but then there's that moment even when Jesus is talking to the disciples, right, and they're kind of just discerning who he is, right? Is this really the Messiah? And he says, my blood is true drink and my flesh is true food, and you must eat this, and then they all leave, and then there's just a few apostles left, and Jesus looks at them mournfully and says, well, you leave me too. And then it's Peter. It's like, well, where will we go? This man went from get off my boat, man, and let me do my job to I'm going to follow this guy to his crucifixion. I mean, so I think in our discernment, right, that you see how his whole life changes and is transformed is really the beauty of vocation and discernment. And another thing I want to pick up on and please jump in, Deacon, is this concept of sacrifice, right? People always talk about, oh, you're giving this up to pursue this vocation. You're giving this up to, look what you're going to give up your freedom when you're married.
You don't have a wife. They really they go to that one first. Like, oh, you're such a young man. Oh, I'm not that young, but you're such a young man, and you won't have a wife. It's like, but like I said, at the end of the day, me personally, I say, well, I didn't choose this.
Absolutely, and I think you're talking about like your wife, right? Almost choosing you, right? Yeah. What's fascinating is again, you talk about this me religion, right? And you notice when why don't you have a wife? A wife's a commodity.
Yeah.
A wife's a commodity. It's nothing about the vocation aspect or supporting your wife and you know, of love and sacrificing your whole being for her. It's a commodity. That's, oh, you should have a pretty wife. You know, someone to take out at nice nights to dinner, or someone to make a home and cook meals for you, or to have kids with. Like, it's a commodity because it's a social capital, right? Or even in I mean, just anything. Like, it always comes down to this self equation, and the beauty of vocation, whether it's to marriage, right, or to the priesthood, or to some aspect of religious life, it's actually giving yourself for some greater end.
Yeah, I'd like to say that I think one of the things we're picking up from discernment is to giving God the blank check. Said, Lord, what do you want me to do with my life? What is your will for me? And I think all of you that are watching this, you can give God that opportunity for the call to the vocation of the priesthood, or maybe the diaconate, or maybe the consecrated life or religious life, and have the courage to do that, because the fact of the matter is our life here is short. The Psalms say, you know, we're like the grass in the morning, you know, we bloom and then we're gone. Wicked people are like the smoke, they're just blown away. And in a sense, you could talk about the shortness of life, but let's also look at the longness of eternity. And so our legacy can be, Lord, you gave me one life and I lived it for you. And I've already served the Lord many years, but I want to give him what's left of my life here on this earth. And I want to treat the church like my bride. I want to treat her with love and respect. And I'll use what I've learned all these years as a deacon to help me be a better priest. But it takes, y'all were talking about courage earlier, but it takes courage to give God that blank check. But you got to figure God's will is always going to be better than your will. But it'll be a struggle. It's going to be hard to go through that, your will versus God's will. That's ongoing, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
But to be willing to give God that blank check and give God your life in whatever way he calls you, you will not regret it.
Yeah, and then to act like, oh, this, you know, once I had it, oh, this was easy, I just showed up. Blah, blah. There was fear, there's doubt, there's misunderstanding. I mean, there's emotions, there's trial and error. It wasn't like all of a sudden everything became perfect. And it wasn't just like, oh, I'm going to do this no matter what. No. But it was a situation of awareness of things I never noticed before. So the discernment helped me through the fear. It helps you through the doubts. It helps you through the confusion. Because without it, we allow those things to control us and they hold us down. They stop us from being our real selves with God. We want to keep it bottled up. We're afraid to take that step outside. What does he say? I don't want to go outside because there's a lion somewhere out there. And it's like, so what do? You hide. You know, and just like the COVID was a very tough thing, because what happened? You had to hang on to that faith. You needed to discern that, okay, I can't go to church right now. So do you abandon your faith? So you had to have that prayer life. But just like Jesus, the one thing that I've super learned that I never really thought about, and I realized after reading through and seeing things that Jesus went off, is silence. I never appreciated silence. I either always watched something, I had music on, I had people around me being loud bar. I didn't like science, or I was never open to the silence of just myself, being alone with God. I never had that until I came into this kind of new profound thinking of, how do I hear if I'm not listening? And how can I listen if all I hear is everything and everyone else? And so if it's one thing I recommend to anyone, if you don't know what you're going through, or even if you're struggling with anything, find some silence for yourself. Find some of that peaceful moments with God, even if it's a small little reading, but give yourself some time alone, and give it a time of, like, not just meditation, but even just a simple conversation sometimes. It builds up. It's the building up. It's the hardest thing you're going to do is start something. Because the fear of looking dumb, the fear of, I don't have time for this. We're always going to have the fear of, I don't have time for this. And that's why I can tell myself every day, I don't have time to pray. I don't have time to be alone in silence. I have family. I have children. But you don't understand, when you do find that time, when you make that time, everything you do that day becomes better. Then that week becomes better. That month becomes better. That year becomes better. Your discernment becomes better. because you're recharging yourself. You're giving yourself that hope and that life through it. So it's going to be hard because everything's going to tell you, no, you can't do it. No, you don't have time. No, this isn't worth it. But it is. The hardest thing you're going to do is getting through that resistance of trying it. But once you get it going, it's refreshing, it's rejuvenating, and it's almost necessary, I think. Because Jesus did it so many times. He went off. He had his guys, then he'd go off. And he'd go off in silence. He'd go off by himself. And I never realized how important that was.
I'd like to recommend, building on what you just said, your personal prayer life, give God at least 20 minutes a day. 30 would be better. And then 1 hour of Eucharistic adoration a week. Just sitting in front of, hopefully you can use the tabernacle, but hopefully the Jesus exposed in the monstrance is just, you're looking at Jesus, he's looking at you. And it's like being in the sun. You get the radiation from the sun. You get the graces that flow from being in his presence. And it'll make your day better, your week better, your month better. But especially if you're trying to discern. And that's the best time and the best place to give God the blank check and say, Lord, what do you want for me to do?
Yeah, I think that's the big takeaway, is just being open to God's will and being open to the voice of God in our lives. Because, I mean, you look at all the saints in history, you look at the martyrs, they listened, right? And again, we live in a time where listening and silence is almost an evil, right? I mean, this is why TikTok and Instagram are so terrible, right? And on Facebook and YouTube with all those little short videos, we have to fill every single second with that time. I mean, all three of us, here, we were born before really the advent of the cell phone, right? And I remember, world before cell phone, it was actually much more alive and vibrant.
You had to talk to people.
Yeah, you had to talk to people, but also you had to embrace silence. I was even thinking about that. I went to a restaurant the other day, and I was waiting on my friend to come, and I'm looking around, and I see everyone has their phones. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, they fill every waking moment. And what's funny is, people today in our time, we're very health conscious, which I know, even me, it's I gotta work out some more, right? But people are almost obsessive about health, and it's like you have to spend an hour a day running, or you have to prepare for this triathlon or marathon. You gotta spend, if we just dedicated a fraction, like you're saying, 15, 20 minutes a day to prayer or silence, right? I mean, we're not very spiritually healthy as a culture anymore, as a society. And I think it's so critical for our vocation, because the same thing, that whether it's marriage or diaconate or religious life or priesthood, right? If you're not taking the time to adequately spiritually prepare and investigate and open yourself to listening to God's voice, well, then when are you going to hear it? And just given that opportunity, it doesn't necessarily mean like, if you're silent for 20 minutes a day, you're going to enter seminary. That'd be a really weird equation. No, but it's, who knows? It could be just God may be calling you to a certain devotion or to a certain path in life. And we just got to, lean into that. And so with that in mind, I'm going to discern ending this chat, because I want to go discern what I'm going to eat for dinner. Or a cigar. Or we could discern what cigars to have. Right? Are we allowed to talk about tobacco on this? I have no idea. Apparently, yes. So, no, we want to thank y'all for joining us today on this podcast. And we want to assure you that we're praying for everyone in the Archdiocese. And we pray for all you who are discerning. And hopefully one of you watching this one day, one of you young men will be here in this chairs in the Emmaus house. Father Tom, $5 more. And you'll be the one chatting about your vocation and hopefully the way God has brought you here and impacted you. And anyways, God bless. Have a good one. We're going to wave to the camera now like those penguins in the movie.